At my exit meeting, my replacement called me replaceable. "We're streamlining for the future," Simon announced to the conference room. Everyone nodded in agreement. I sat there silent, watching faces I'd meant to avoid my eyes. Then the CEO walked in, said my name, and the room went dead quiet. By 5 p.m., Simon was cleaning out his desk instead of mine. The conference room on the 9th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Portland. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're a subscriber, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." And on any other Tuesday, I would have appreciated the view of Mount Hood in the distance. But today, those windows just meant more people could see inside. More witnesses to what Simon Black was calling a transition meeting. I'd arrived at 2 p.m. sharp, wearing my gray blazer and the silver necklace my daughter gave me for my 40th birthday last year. The email had said, "Exit discussion, Kendra Hayes," with a calendar invite that included half the marketing department. That should have been my first clue this wasn't going to be a quiet, dignified conversation about severance packages. Simon was already there, standing at the head of the table like he owned it. 29 years old with an MBA from some online program and a father who played golf with 3 of our board members. He'd been hired 6 months ago as Strategic Innovation Director, which apparently meant second-guessing every decision I'd made in 12 years as Creative Director. "Kendra, thanks for coming," he said, not getting up, not shaking my hand. Just gesturing to a chair at the far end of the table like I was a job candidate instead of the person who'd built this entire department from 3 people to 47. The others filed in over the next 5 minutes. Megan Jacobs from Brand Development, who I'd personally recruited from a failing startup and trained for 2 years. Curtis Swan from Digital Strategy, whose divorce I'd listened to him cry about for 6 months while covering his workload. Sandy Charleston from Client Relations, who'd called me at midnight more times than I could count when campaigns went sideways. Lynette Hayes, no relation, despite the shared surname, from Content, whose dyslexia I'd quietly accommodated by adjusting her workflow when HR wanted to let her go. Not one of them looked at me as they took their seats. Then there was Claudette Black, Simon's younger sister, who he'd brought in last month as his special assistant. 26, fresh out of grad school, and she walked around the office like she'd already been promoted to my job. Today she sat right next to Simon, laptop open, taking notes like this was a board meeting instead of an execution. "So," Simon began, pulling up a presentation on the screen. My exit meeting had a PowerPoint. "We're here to discuss the organizational restructuring that Kendra and I have been planning." Line number 1. We hadn't planned anything. 2 weeks ago, Simon had walked into my office and told me the company was going in a new direction. When I'd asked what that meant, he'd smiled and said, "We'll discuss it in detail soon." Apparently, this was the discussion. "The market has changed dramatically," Simon continued, clicking to a slide full of buzzwords. Synergy. Disruption. Agile methodology. And frankly, some of our approaches have become, let's say, dated. A few people shifted in their seats. Megan coughed. But nobody spoke up. "Kendra's been with us for 12 years, Simon said, and I noticed he didn't say my name with any warmth. Just stated it like a fact. 12 years of consistent, steady work. But consistent and steady aren't what we need anymore. We need innovation. We need people who can pivot." I sat perfectly still, hands folded on the table, watching him. I'd learned a long time ago that silence made people uncomfortable. Let them fill it. Let them show you exactly who they are. The reality is, Simon clicked to another slide, this one showing org charts with my name conspicuously absent. "We need to make room for fresh perspectives. The Kendra Hayes approach, safe campaigns, traditional media, proven methods, that worked 10 years ago. But it's 2024. We're competing with companies that are doing AI-generated content, viral TikTok strategies, influencer partnerships. I'd pitched an influencer campaign 8 months ago. Simon had called it trying too hard to be young. But why bring up inconvenient facts? The decision has been made, he said, not even pretending this was a discussion, that Kendra's position will be eliminated. Her responsibilities will be redistributed among the team, with Claudette taking on the primary leadership role. There it was. The 26-year-old with 6 months of experience was getting my job. The job I'd built. The department I'd created. The campaigns that had won 9 national awards and brought in $40 million in revenue. Now, I want to be clear, Simon said, and his voice took on this rehearsed quality, like he'd practiced this part in the mirror. This isn't personal. Kendra's been adequate. She's done fine work for her time. But the world has moved on, and we have to move with it. Sometimes you have to make the hard call and admit when someone has become. He paused for effect, replaceable. Replaceable. The word hung in the air like smoke. I watched it land on each person in that room. Watched them process it. Waited for someone, anyone, to object. Curtis cleared his throat but said nothing. Megan studied her hands. Sandy nodded slightly, like she'd already accepted this as truth. Lynette actually pulled out her phone and started scrolling. We're offering a severance package, Claudette spoke up for the first time, her voice bright and efficient. 4 weeks for every year of service, so that's 48 weeks of salary. Plus your accumulated PTO. We think that's quite generous. Generous. 12 years reduced to a math equation. 48 weeks to find a new job in an industry where being over 40 made you invisible. We'll need your building access returned today, Simon continued. IT will wipe your laptop remotely. Any personal items can be collected under supervision before you leave. We've scheduled you to be out by 4:30. 4:30, in 2.5 hours, my entire career here would be erased. I should say something. I should defend myself, argue, make them uncomfortable. But instead, I just sat there, memorizing their faces. Every person who'd benefited from my mentorship, my advocacy, my friendship. Every single one of them sitting silent while Simon dismantled 12 years of my life. That's when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, purposeful footsteps that made Simon pause mid-sentence. The conference room door opened. And Miles Charleston, CEO of Charleston Creative Group, walked in. Miles Charleston didn't walk into rooms. He arrived. 6'3", silver hair, the kind of presence that made everyone sit up straighter without him saying a word. He'd founded this company 32 years ago in his garage, and even though we'd grown to 400 employees across 3 offices, he still knew every person's name. Including mine. Kendra, he said, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Simon stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. Miles, we weren't expecting. No, I imagine you weren't. Miles walked past Simon without looking at him, came straight to where I was sitting, and extended his hand. I shook it, confused but maintaining my composure. I apologize for the interruption, Kendra. I just got back from Singapore an hour ago and saw this meeting on the calendar. Thought I should sit in. He pulled out the chair next to me, the seat Sandy had conspicuously avoided, and sat down. Please, Simon, continue, Miles said, leaning back with his arms crossed. You were explaining why we're eliminating our creative director position? Simon's face had gone pale. Well, as I was saying, it's about organizational efficiency and... Organizational efficiency. Miles repeated the words slowly, like he was tasting something spoiled. That's interesting. Because our Q3 numbers show that Kendra's campaigns brought in 42% of our total revenue. The Cascade Coffee rebrand alone secured us a 3-year contract worth $8 million. Yes, but, Simon tried. The tech startup portfolio she developed has 12 companies, 8 of which have gone public or been acquired, generating substantial referral business. Her team's retention rate is 94%, highest in the company. Client satisfaction scores for her accounts average 4.8 out of 5. Miles pulled out his phone, scrolled for a moment. I'm reading from the Q3 report you submitted 2 weeks ago, Simon. The one where you took credit for these numbers in your section. The room was so quiet I could hear the ventilation system humming. So help me understand, Miles continued, his voice dangerously calm. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. How the person responsible for nearly half our revenue and our highest performing team is replaceable. Simon opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Claudette like she might have an answer. She was staring at her laptop screen like she wanted to crawl inside it. And Claudette, Miles said, turning to her. You're taking over as creative director? What campaigns have you led? I've been assisting Simon with strategic planning. What campaigns have you led? Miles repeated. Well, none independently yet, but... How many client pitches have you attended? Claudette's voice got smaller. 3. How many have you won? Silence. That wasn't a rhetorical question. None, Claudette whispered. But one is still pending. Miles turned to the rest of the room. His eyes moved from face to face, and I watched each person shrink under his gaze. Megan, he said. Didn't Kendra recommend you for your position 3 years ago? Megan nodded, not meeting his eyes. Curtis, who approved your remote work arrangement when your father was sick last year? Curtis mumbled something inaudible. Sandy, who trained you on the Morrison account after you nearly lost it? Sandy stared at the table. Lynette, who restructured your workflow and fought HR to keep you on staff? Lynette had tears in her eyes now. Miles stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city for a long moment. When he turned back, his expression was carved from stone. I've been running this company for 32 years, he said quietly. Built it from nothing. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, hired wrong people, trusted the wrong instincts. But I've also learned to recognize the difference between someone who talks about innovation and someone who actually delivers it. He walked back to the table, stood behind Simon's chair. Kendra Hayes has delivered consistently for 12 years. She's mentored half the people in this room. She's saved campaigns others had written off as failures. She's brought in clients, retained talent, and built a department that other agencies actively try to poach from. Simon tried to speak. If we could just... I'm not finished. Miles's voice cut through like a blade. I left you in charge for 3 weeks while I was in Asia. 3 weeks. And you decided to fire the most valuable creative leader we have, replace her with someone who's led 0 campaigns, and present it as organizational efficiency? He leaned down, his hands on the table, looking Simon directly in the eye. Pack your office, Simon. You're done here. The words echoed in the silent room. And Claudette, Miles added, not even looking at her. Your employment ends today as well. Then he turned to me, and his expression softened just slightly. Kendra, my office. We need to talk. I followed Miles out of the conference room in complete silence. Behind us, I could hear chairs scraping, whispered conversations starting, someone's stifled sob, Claudette, probably. But I didn't look back. Just walked down the hallway with my head up, past the open plan workspace where heads popped up like prairie dogs as we passed. Miles's office was on the top floor, corner suite with windows on 2 sides. He'd never been one for flashy decor, just a solid wooden desk that was older than most of our employees, bookshelves packed with advertising awards and industry publications, and photos of his 3 daughters at various ages. He closed the door behind us, gestured to the leather couch instead of the formal chairs across from his desk. We sat. I owe you an apology, he said immediately. I should have been paying closer attention. Should have seen what Simon was planning. You were in Singapore closing the Tanaka deal, I said. You can't monitor every meeting. I can when someone's trying to force out one of my best people. He rubbed his face, suddenly looking every one of his 64 years. How long has this been building? 6 months. Since Simon was hired. Miles nodded slowly. His father called in a favor. Said his son had fresh ideas, modern perspective, could help us compete with the newer agencies. I gave him too much latitude. You gave him enough rope, I said quietly. That I did. He stood, walked to his desk, pulled out a folder. I want to show you something. I got an interesting email 6 weeks ago. Actually, several interesting emails over the past 6 weeks. He handed me the folder. Inside were printed emails, all from the same address, concerned employee 2024@protonmail.com. No identifying information, but the contents were detailed. Screenshots of Slack conversations where Simon mocked my campaigns to other employees. Internal memos where he'd slowly been repositioning himself as the real, creative force while painting me as obsolete. Draft organizational charts showing my position eliminated. Budget proposals that redirected my department's resources to innovation initiatives under his control. Someone's been documenting everything, Miles said. Sent me updates every few days. Very thorough. Very careful to include evidence, not just accusations. I looked through the pages, recognizing conversations I'd never been part of, decisions made in meetings I wasn't invited to, a systematic campaign to undermine everything I'd built. Do you know who sent these? I asked, though I had my suspicions. No idea. Anonymous email, routed through servers in 3 different countries according to our IT guy. Whoever it is knows their way around privacy tools. He paused. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? I met his eyes. No. He smiled slightly. Of course not. Anyway, these emails are the reason I moved up my return from Singapore by 4 days. I was supposed to be gone another week. But something told me I needed to be here for that meeting. Lucky timing. Very lucky. He took the folder back, set it on his desk. Kendra, I'm going to be direct with you. Simon's gone, Claudette's gone, but the damage is done. Your team just watched you get publicly humiliated. Half of them stayed silent. That's going to be hard to come back from. I know. So I want to offer you something different. He pulled out another folder, this one much thicker. We've been in talks to acquire Meridian Digital in Seattle. Small agency, 20 employees, good client list, strong creative reputation. The founder wants to retire, but she's worried about her people getting swallowed up by a corporate machine. He handed me the folder. I opened it, saw financial statements, client lists, employee rosters. I want you to run it, Miles said. Not as a branch office, as its own entity under the Charleston umbrella. You'd have full creative control, hire your own team, keep the Meridian name or rebrand it as you see fit. Budget of $15 million for the first year, with performance bonuses tied to growth. I stared at the numbers, the opportunity. It was more than I'd ever had here. Complete autonomy. A fresh start. You'd be based in Seattle, he continued. Though you'd still collaborate with Portland on bigger campaigns. And you'd have a seat on the executive board. No more reporting to people who don't understand what you do. This is generous, I said carefully. This is business. I'm not losing you to some competitor because I was in Singapore when an idiot tried to play politics. He leaned forward. But Kendra, you need to know something. I'm not just making this offer because of what happened today. No. No. I've been planning this for 6 weeks. Since those anonymous emails started coming in. He smiled. I was going to offer it to you next week. Simon just gave me the perfect setup to make it look like a rescue instead of a promotion. I sat back, processing. 6 weeks. The timeline clicked into place. You're very good at chess, Miles. So are you, apparently. He stood, extended his hand again. Think about it. I need an answer by Monday. I shook his hand, left his office, and took the elevator down to the parking garage. Sat in my car for 10 minutes, staring at nothing. Then I drove home, where my laptop was waiting with a folder labeled insurance, and thought about everything that was about to happen next. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back 5 months, to the day everything started unraveling. Or maybe the day I started paying attention to what had been unraveling for a while. It was a Thursday in May, unseasonably warm for Portland. I'd come home early because our air conditioning had died, and the repair guy could only come between 2 and 4. The kind of inconvenience that used to annoy me, but that day felt like a gift. The technician was a guy in his 50s named Lou, who talked non-stop about his daughter's volleyball team while he worked. He needed to access the electrical panel in our home office, the room that was technically shared space but had basically become my husband Wilbur's domain over the past 2 years. Wilbur Jacobs. In pharmaceutical sales, traveled 3 weeks out of every month, made good money, and had slowly become more of a roommate than a husband over our 15 years of marriage. Just need to move this filing cabinet, Lou said, already pushing the heavy metal unit away from the wall. Panel's right behind here. The cabinet scraped across the hardwood floor, and several papers fluttered down from behind it, probably sucked into the gap over months of the cabinet sitting there. Sorry about that, Lou said, bending to pick them up. Always find stuff back there when I move furniture. I took the papers from him. Electric bills from 2 years ago, a warranty card for Wilbur's printer, some golf tournament flyers, and a cream-colored envelope with no address, just W written on the front in looping handwriting. Lou was already opening the electrical panel, muttering about blown fuses. I stood there holding the envelope, recognizing that handwriting. I'd seen it on birthday cards, thank you notes, the passive-aggressive post-its that appeared on shared documents at work. Claudette Black. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The letter inside was dated 3 months ago. My darling W. Last weekend was perfect. I keep replaying every moment, the cabin, the fireplace, the way you looked at me when you said you'd never felt this alive with anyone else. I know we agreed to be careful, especially with everything at work getting complicated, but I'm tired of pretending. I love you. I love the way you see the world, the way you make me laugh, the way you touch me like I'm the only woman who's ever mattered. Kendra doesn't appreciate what she has. She's so consumed with work, with being the perfect creative director, that she doesn't even notice when you're gone for days. I had to sit down. Just lowered myself into Wilbur's desk chair and kept reading. Simon says the transition will happen within 6 months. Once Kendra's out of the picture at work, things will be easier. We won't have to sneak around at the office anymore. And once you're free of your marriage, we can finally be together openly. The age difference doesn't matter to me. 23 years is nothing when 2 people connect the way we do. You make me feel seen in a way no guy my age ever has. And I know I make you feel young again, remind you there's more to life than a wife who treats you like a business partner instead of a lover. The cabin. Wilbur had told me he was at a sales conference in Bend. I'd even texted him goodnight, and he'd sent back a photo of what he claimed was his hotel room. I'd never questioned it. I'm counting down the days until this is all over. Until Kendra's gone from Charleston Creative, until you've told her about us, until we can stop hiding. Simon promised me the creative director position once she's out. Can you imagine? Us working together every day, building something amazing, and then coming home to each other every night. Your birthday is coming up. I bought you something special, it's hidden at the cabin in the bedroom closet. I can't wait to see your face when you open it. All my love, Claudette. I sat there for probably 10 minutes, just staring at the letter. Lou finished with the electrical panel, tested the air conditioning, gave me a thumbs up from the doorway. I heard myself thanking him, heard the front door close, heard his van drive away. Then I stood up and really looked at Wilbur's office. The framed photo of us from our wedding 15 years ago was face down on the shelf. When had that happened? There was a new cologne on his desk, something expensive in a black bottle, not the drugstore stuff he'd worn for years. A gym bag in the corner that I'd never seen him actually take to the gym. A second phone charger plugged in behind the desk, though he only had one phone. Or so I'd thought. I turned on his computer. Wilbur had never been tech-savvy enough to secure anything properly. His password was still our anniversary date, same as it had been for a decade. His email was open. I started scrolling. The email folder labeled C wasn't even hidden. Just sitting there in his sidebar like he didn't think I'd ever look. Or maybe he didn't care anymore. I clicked it open. 347 emails between Wilbur and Claudette, dating back 8 months. The first ones were professional enough, her asking about client references for Simon's interview, Wilbur offering to make introductions. But by email number 20, the tone had shifted. You looked incredible today. That blue dress. I couldn't stop thinking about you during the budget meeting. Last night was a mistake. We can't do this again. Sent 3 a.m. Stop saying it was a mistake. You know what you felt. Sent 3:15 a.m. I'm married. You're 26. This is insane. Age is just a number. And you said yourself your marriage has been dead for years. I clicked through months of correspondence. The progression was textbook: initial resistance, gradual surrender, elaborate planning. They'd met at hotels in Seattle, the cabin in Mount Hood that belonged to Simon's family, even once at a conference in San Diego that Wilbur claimed was mandatory for work. There were photos. Nothing explicit, thank God, but enough. Wilbur and Claudette at a restaurant I didn't recognize, his arm around her waist. The two of them hiking somewhere with pine trees and mountain views. Her sitting in his lap on a leather couch, both of them holding wine glasses and smiling at the camera. But the worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was the planning. I found an email thread from 2 months ago between Wilbur, Claudette, and Simon. The subject line, case situation, timeline. Simon, Dad's pushing for faster results. We need Kendra out by end of Q3 at the latest. My position isn't secure until I show I can handle major personnel decisions. Wilbur, what's the holdup? You said you had board support. Simon, I do, but Miles is unpredictable. He's old school loyal to legacy employees. I need ironclad justification, not just, we want to go younger. Claudette, what if we document performance issues? I could start keeping track of missed deadlines, client complaints. Simon, fabricating evidence is risky. Better to position it as organizational evolution. Kendra's great, but we've outgrown her approach, plays better than attacking her work. Wilbur, the sooner this happens, the sooner C and I can stop sneaking around. Kendra barely notices I exist anymore, but she'd make the divorce hell if she found out about us before she's already out of the company. Less leverage that way. I had to stand up, walk to the window, breathe. They'd been planning this together. My husband and my future replacement, strategizing about how to destroy my career so their affair would be more convenient. I went back to the computer. Found Wilbur's calendar, the real one, not the sanitized version he shared with me. The sales conferences that were actually weekend trips with Claudette. The client dinners that were dates at expensive restaurants. The golf outings that didn't involve golf at all. His credit card statements were in a folder labeled Personal, 2024. I opened the most recent one. Charges at boutique hotels. Jewelry stores. A purchase at Victoria's Secret for $340. Dinner at Le Pigeon, the restaurant where Wilbur and I had our first anniversary. Apparently, he'd taken Claudette there last month while I was working late on the Morrison campaign. But then I found something that made my blood run cold. A charge for $8,500 to Precision Family Law. I searched Wilbur's email for the firm name. Found a consultation confirmation from 6 weeks ago and a retainer agreement for divorce proceedings. He'd already hired a lawyer. I kept digging. Found a draft email in his saved folder that he'd never sent, labeled, for K, when ready. Kendra. I think we both know this marriage has been over for a long time. We've become strangers living in the same house. You're married to your job, and I need more than that. I've filed for divorce. My attorney will be in touch about the details. I'm asking for a clean split. You can keep the house, I'll take my retirement accounts, we'll separate assets fairly. I hope we can handle this like adults. There's no reason this has to be ugly. Wilbur. No mention of Claudette. No admission of the affair. Just a calculated exit strategy that painted me as the workaholic who'd neglected her marriage, leaving him no choice but to leave. I printed everything. Every email, every photo, every receipt, every calendar entry. The printer ran for 45 minutes straight. Then I went to the office supply store, bought a scanner, and digitized every page, uploading them to a cloud storage account Wilbur didn't know existed. The physical copies went into a manila envelope that I took to a safety deposit box at a bank across town, not our usual bank, a different one where Wilbur had no access. When Wilbur came home that night at 9 p.m., smelling like Claudette's perfume, I knew that scent now, had smelled it in my office often enough. I had dinner waiting. His favorite, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables. Good trip? I asked as we ate. Long, exhausting. You know how these regional meetings are. Did you close the Anderson account? Still pending. Should know by next week. There was no Anderson account. I'd made it up to see if he'd lie. He had. That's great, honey, I said, and kissed him on the cheek as I cleared his plate. That night, lying next to him while he snored, I started planning. Not the emotional breakdown they expected. Not the messy divorce that would give them something to bond over. Something much more precise. Something that would make that exit meeting look like mercy. The house was empty the night of the exit meeting. Wilbur had texted around 7 p.m., brief, impersonal, the way all his messages had become. Dinner with the Portland accounts team. Don't wait up. Portland accounts team. He was probably with Claudette, celebrating what they thought was their victory. Maybe Simon was there too, toasting their successful execution. The image should have hurt, but I felt nothing. Just cold, clear focus. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good Pinot Noir from the Willamette Valley that Wilbur always said was too expensive for weeknight drinking, and opened my laptop at the kitchen table. The file I needed was already prepared. I'd been building it for 5 months, ever since that day with the air conditioning repair. A spreadsheet with 127 names, phone numbers, email addresses, personal details that most people didn't bother to track. But I'd always been thorough. It's why my client retention rate was 94%. I remembered birthdays, anniversary dates, kids' names, pet names. I knew which clients preferred phone calls over emails, who was going through a divorce, whose parent had just been diagnosed with cancer, who was secretly looking to sell their company. This wasn't information you found in Charleston Creative's client files. This was relationship capital I'd built over 12 years, one conversation at a time, one remembered detail at a time. And it was mine. I started with the biggest accounts first. Luke Hayes at Hayes Manufacturing, no relation, despite the surname. 68 years old, built his company from a single machine shop to a $200 million operation. His wife had died 2 years ago, and he'd been quietly falling apart. I'd sat with him for 3 hours after a pitch meeting once, just listening while he cried about losing her. Simon had never even met him, all communication went through me. Dear Luke, I wanted to reach out personally to let you know about some changes at Charleston Creative. As of today, I'll no longer be serving as your primary contact. The company is restructuring, and my position has been eliminated. I can't express how much your trust has meant to me over these 8 years. Watching Hayes Manufacturing grow, being even a small part of that journey, it's been one of the great privileges of my career. Your account will be transitioned to new leadership. I'm sure they'll serve you well. On a personal note, I hope you're doing okay. I know the holidays are approaching, and I remember you mentioned they've been difficult since Margaret passed. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need someone to talk to. With deep gratitude, Kendra. I attached my personal cell number and a new email address I'd created, kendra.hayes.creative@gmail.com. Nothing about starting a new venture. Nothing that could be construed as poaching. Just a genuine goodbye that reminded him I was a person who cared, not just an account manager. Next was Meredith Black, who ran Black & Associates, a law firm with 15 partners and a $3 million annual marketing budget. Her daughter had struggled with addiction, and I'd connected her with resources when she didn't know where to turn. We'd cried together in my office more than once. Dear Meredith, change is coming to Charleston Creative, and I wanted you to hear it from me directly. After 12 years, my role is ending. The specifics don't matter, but I wanted to thank you personally for the trust you've placed in me. Your family has been through so much, and I hope Katie is continuing to do well. You're an incredible mother, and watching you fight for her has been inspiring. The firm will assign new leadership to your account. I'm confident they'll take good care of you. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, professional or personal, please know I'm just a phone call away. All my best, Kendra. Email after email, I crafted each one individually. For Simon Swan at Swan Technologies, I mentioned his son's acceptance to MIT. For Megan Charleston at Charleston Properties, yes, a cousin of Miles, which is how we'd landed the account, I referenced the charity gala she was planning. For Lynette Jacobs at Jacobs Consulting, I acknowledged her recent engagement and congratulated her on finding happiness. Every message was personal, genuine, specific. I wasn't selling anything. Wasn't asking for anything. Just saying goodbye like a human being who'd actually paid attention to their lives. But I also knew what I was really doing. I was reminding 127 people that their relationship had been with me, not with Charleston Creative. That I was the one who remembered, who cared, who showed up. That the letterhead on their contracts mattered far less than the person behind it. Around 1 a.m., my personal email pinged. Luke Hayes. Kendra, this is absolute nonsense. I don't care what Charleston Creative is restructuring. You've been our point person for 8 years, and I'm not working with anyone else. What are your plans? Because wherever you land, Hayes Manufacturing is coming with you. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling something crack in my chest. Not sadness. Not anger. Something like vindication. I typed back carefully. Luke, I appreciate that more than you know. I'm exploring options. Can I call you next week once I have more clarity? His response came back in under a minute. You call me when you're ready. I'll make sure our board knows we're following you, not them. By 3 a.m., I'd sent all 127 emails. By 3:45, I had responses from 18 people. Every single one asked where I was going. Every single one offered to follow. I made myself chamomile tea and watched the sunrise through the kitchen window, thinking about Simon's face in that conference room, about Claudette's trembling hands, about Wilbur sleeping peacefully somewhere while his carefully constructed plan collapsed. Then I opened a new browser tab and started researching business licenses for creative consultancies in Washington state. Friday morning, Miles called my cell at 7 a.m. Have you thought about Seattle? He asked, skipping pleasantries entirely. I have. And? I took a sip of coffee, watching the rain streak down my kitchen window. I want full autonomy. My own hiring decisions, my own creative direction, no interference from Portland unless I request it. Done. And I want to bring people with me. Not poach them, I won't recruit actively. But if people ask to transfer, I want the authority to accept them. Silence on the line. Then, how many people are we talking about? I don't know yet. Could be none. Could be 20. You sent those emails last night, didn't you? Miles said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. The farewell messages to clients. I sent thank you notes. Professional courtesy. Of course. And how many responses have you gotten? I glanced at my laptop. The number had climbed overnight. 43. Asking where you're going? Generally expressing interest in maintaining our working relationship, yes. Miles laughed, a deep, genuine sound. You're ruthless, Kendra. I've always appreciated that about you. All right, here's what I'm proposing. Meridian Digital becomes Hayes Creative, your name, your brand. You get the Seattle office, $15 million budget, and complete autonomy. In exchange, Charleston Creative retains 20% equity and gets first right of refusal on any major accounts you bring in. 10% equity, I countered. And joint venture status on major accounts, not right of refusal. We collaborate as equals. 12%, and you've got a deal. Done. I'll have contracts drawn up by Monday. Can you start looking at office space next week? I already have 3 appointments scheduled for Tuesday. He laughed again. Of course you do. Kendra, one more thing. That anonymous email account that's been feeding me information about Simon? Yes. It stopped sending messages yesterday. Right after the exit meeting. Funny timing. Very funny. If I ever figure out who was behind it, I owe them a bottle of very expensive scotch. I'm sure they'd appreciate that, I said, and hung up. By noon, I'd gotten responses from 78 clients. 61 explicitly asked where I was going. 47 said they wanted to work with me wherever I landed. 12 had already contacted Charleston Creative requesting contract reviews. I spent the afternoon organizing responses, making notes about which accounts would transfer easily and which would require more delicate handling. Then I opened a new email to someone I'd been avoiding thinking about. Sandy Charleston from my office, my former office. The one who'd sat silent during the exit meeting, who'd nodded along with Simon's restructuring speech. But Sandy and I had worked together for 9 years. I'd trained her, promoted her, covered for her when her mother was dying and she needed to take 3 months of unscheduled leave. Sandy. I know yesterday was difficult and uncomfortable for everyone. I don't blame you for staying quiet, you have a mortgage, kids in college, a career to protect. I understand that. I'm reaching out because I wanted you to hear this from me. I'm starting fresh in Seattle. Building something new. And I remember what you said last year when your daughter was choosing between journalism and marketing, that you wished you'd taken more risks when you were younger, built something that was truly yours instead of always working for someone else's vision. If you're interested in taking that risk now, I'd love to talk. No pressure, no hard feelings if the answer is no. But the offer's there if you want it. Take care, Kendra. I sent similar messages to 3 other people from my team. Not Megan, she'd shown her true colors too clearly. Not Curtis Swan, he'd been too eager to laugh at Simon's jokes. But Sandy, Lynette from Content, and Marcus from IT who'd always been quiet but brilliant. Saturday morning, I was measuring the guest bedroom for potential office furniture when my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Kendra Hayes? Speaking. This is Megan Charleston from Charleston Properties. Miles's cousin, one of my clients. I got your email yesterday, and I've been thinking about it all night. I'm glad to hear from you, Megan. Cut the polite stuff. Where are you going, and how do I transfer our contract there? I smiled. I'm opening Hayes Creative in Seattle. But Megan, your current contract with Charleston doesn't expire for 18 months. There'd be penalties. I don't care about penalties. Miles and I had coffee this morning. He told me what happened, what Simon tried to do. That little punk tried to take credit for the rebrand campaign you designed for our downtown properties. My downtown properties that you spent 6 months researching, that you personally presented to our board, that won us 3 industry awards. That campaign was a team effort. Stop being modest. It was your vision, your execution, your late nights. And I'm not letting some 29-year-old with daddy issues take credit for it or handle my account going forward. She paused. Miles said you're launching in 2 weeks. I want to be one of your first official clients. Send me whatever paperwork you need. Megan, I appreciate this more than you know. You saved my company when we were hemorrhaging market share to those tech bro developers. You gave us an identity that actually meant something. This isn't charity, Kendra. This is business. You're good at what you do, and I want to keep working with you. After we hung up, I sat on the guest bed for a long moment, just breathing. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Sandy. When can we talk about Seattle? I'm interested. Monday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. without an alarm. The house was dark and quiet. Wilbur hadn't come home, his car hadn't been in the driveway when I'd gone to bed, and his side of the bed was undisturbed. I didn't call him. Didn't text. Just made coffee and opened my laptop. My inbox had exploded overnight. 103 client responses now. 79 explicitly asking to work with me at my new venture. The subject lines told their own story. Following you to Seattle, contract transition question, you have my loyalty, where do I sign? But the most interesting email had come in at 2:47 a.m. from an address I didn't recognize. The Truth Matters 2024@protonmail.com. Kendra. You don't know me, but I've been watching what happened to you. I work at Charleston Creative, I won't say in what capacity, and I thought you should know what's happening this morning. Simon sent calendar invites at 6 a.m. for an emergency 7 a.m. meeting. The partners are in full panic mode. 18 accounts have formally requested contract reviews. 6 have already submitted termination notices citing changes in creative leadership. The Morrison Group sent a letter threatening legal action if you're not reinstated as their lead. Megan is crying in the bathroom. Curtis is avoiding everyone. Simon's office door has been closed since he arrived at 6:30. There's a rumor Miles is flying back from a board meeting in San Francisco early. Someone heard him yelling on the phone about catastrophic mismanagement. Just thought you'd want to know. You deserved better than what they did to you. A friend. I read the email 3 times, then saved it to my encrypted folder with everything else. At 7:15, my phone rang. Thomas Bradley, one of the partners who'd been silent during the exit meeting. Kendra, we need to talk about the client situation. Good morning, Thomas. What client situation? Don't play games. You know exactly what's happening. The Morrison Group is threatening to sue us. Hayes Manufacturing sent a letter saying they're terminating their contract effective immediately. Luke Hayes specifically cited elimination of trusted creative leadership as the reason. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate? Kendra, we're looking at a potential loss of $23 million in annual revenue. In 3 days. This is catastrophic. I sipped my coffee, waited. We want to make this right, Thomas continued, his voice tight. The exit meeting was handled poorly. Simon overstepped. We're prepared to offer you your position back with a significant raise and... No. You didn't let me finish. I don't need to. The answer is no. Kendra, be reasonable. You've been with us for 12 years. You built that department. Don't throw that away because Simon made a tactical error. A tactical error. I let the words hang. Is that what we're calling it? Not conspiracy to force me out so my husband's girlfriend could take my job. Silence. You knew, I said quietly. You all knew about Wilbur and Claudette. That's why none of you questioned Simon's decision. It made things tidier, didn't it? The wronged husband's mistress gets promoted, the oblivious wife gets pushed out, and everyone gets to pretend it was about organizational efficiency. That's not, we didn't. I have emails, Thomas. Between Simon, Wilbur, and Claudette, planning my exit. Discussing timeline strategies. Debating how to position it so Miles wouldn't object. Would you like me to forward them to you, or do you already have copies? Jesus Christ, Kendra. I'm starting Hayes Creative in Seattle. Officially launching in 10 days. I have office space secured, staff hired, and approximately 60 clients ready to transfer. If Charleston Creative wants to maintain any kind of relationship with those clients, Miles and I have already negotiated terms. But I won't be setting foot in your Portland office again. You can't just take our entire client base. I'm not taking anyone. They're making independent business decisions based on relationships I built over 12 years. Relationships that existed before their contracts with Charleston and will continue after. I hung up before he could respond. At 8:30, another email came from the anonymous account. Simon just left the building. Looked like he might throw up in the parking lot. Claudette hasn't shown up at all. Rumor is Miles told them both not to come back. The morning meeting was brutal. Megan tried to defend the restructuring decision and got shut down by 3 different partners. Someone asked where Curtis was, and Jennifer from marketing said he called in sick. But his LinkedIn shows he's been active this morning, so make of that what you will. Your old office is still empty. No one wants to go in there. It's like a crime scene. At 9:45, Wilbur finally called. I let it go to voicemail, but listened to the message immediately. Kendra, we need to talk. Now. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this needs to stop. You're destroying people's careers, including mine. Claudette is devastated. Simon might lose everything. This is vindictive and unprofessional, Anne. The message cut off at the time limit. I saved it to my evidence folder and blocked his number. At 10:30, Sandy called. I'm in, she said without preamble. Seattle, Hayes Creative, whatever you need. I've already drafted my resignation letter. Sandy, you should think about this. I've been thinking about it all weekend. I sat in that meeting and watched them tear you apart, and I said nothing. I'm ashamed of that. Let me make it right. This isn't about redemption. It's about working with someone I respect instead of someone I'm afraid of. When do you need me to start? By Tuesday afternoon, the dam had completely broken. Miles called at 2 p.m. I'm looking at the numbers. 27 accounts have requested transfers to Hayes Creative. That's $48 million in annual revenue. I'm aware. The board is losing their minds. 3 partners are threatening to resign. Simon's father called me personally, screaming about lawsuits and non-compete clauses. Do I have a non-compete clause, Miles? No. I specifically didn't include them in creative staff contracts because I thought they were anti-competitive nonsense. Apparently, that decision is now costing us dearly. Sounds like a challenging situation. He laughed, sharp and surprised. You're enjoying this. I'm building a business. What happens to Charleston Creative isn't my concern anymore. Fair enough. Listen, the board wants to sue you for stealing clients. They're claiming you actively went after accounts while still employed. I sent thank you emails after I was terminated. Every client who's transferring contacted me first, unsolicited. I have timestamps on every communication. I know. I told them they don't have a case. But they're panicking, and panicking men make stupid decisions. He paused. Honestly, I think you're handling this perfectly. Simon needed to learn that talent isn't replaceable just because you put someone younger in the chair. I appreciate that. Also, I fired Wilbur. My hand tightened on the phone. You fired my husband? Your soon-to-be ex-husband. I reviewed his personnel file after your call with Thomas. Found some interesting discrepancies in his expense reports. Apparently, he's been charging personal expenses to client entertainment accounts for 18 months. Hotels that weren't near any client locations. Dinners for 2 at romantic restaurants. Even a piece of jewelry from Tiffany that he claimed was a client gift. I closed my eyes. How much? $43,000. Give or take. Jesus. I'm giving him the option to pay it back quietly or face charges. My lawyers are drafting the paperwork now. Thought you should know before he tries to spin some version of events that makes him the victim. After Miles hung up, I sat in my temporary home office, the guest bedroom with a folding table and 2 monitors, and let myself feel it. Not satisfaction, exactly. More like the settling of accounts. The universe correcting its balance. My phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Claudette. Please call me. I need to talk to you. I stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. No. Her response came immediately. Please. I'm begging you. I made a terrible mistake. I was stupid and selfish and I'm so sorry. I've lost everything, my job, my reputation. Wilbur won't return my calls. Simon blames me for the whole disaster. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on. You participated in a plan to destroy my career so you could sleep with my husband more conveniently. You don't get 5 minutes. You don't get closure. You get exactly what you earned. She tried calling. I declined it. She sent 4 more texts that I didn't read. Wednesday brought a surprise visitor to my house. I was reviewing office furniture catalogs when the doorbell rang at 11 a.m. Simon Black stood on my porch, looking like he'd aged 5 years in a week. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes. "Can we talk?" he asked. "No. Please. Just 5 minutes. You had your chance to talk during my exit meeting. When you called me replaceable in front of my entire team. When you gave my job to your sister. When you coordinated with my husband to time my firing for maximum convenience to their affair." He flinched at each point. I didn't know about Wilbur and Claudette. Not at first. When did you find out? 2 months ago. Claudette told me. Said they were in love, that Wilbur was leaving you anyway, that it would be cleaner if you weren't at the company anymore. And you thought, what? That made it okay? I thought. He stopped, ran his hands through his hair. I thought I was helping. Making a hard situation easier for everyone. You thought you were securing your position by proving to Daddy and the board that you could make tough calls. I was just convenient collateral damage. He didn't deny it. Simon, I don't care what you thought or what your intentions were. You humiliated me publicly, destroyed my marriage privately, and tried to steal credit for 12 years of my work. And now you're here looking for what? Forgiveness? Understanding? I'm here to ask you to stop. Stop what? Taking the clients. Destroying the company. You've made your point. You've proven that you're valuable, that I was wrong. But if this continues, Charleston Creative will collapse. 47 people will lose their jobs. People who had nothing to do with what happened to you. I stepped onto the porch, closed the door behind me, looked him directly in the eye. You should have thought about those 47 people before you called me replaceable, I said quietly. Before you planned my exit like it was a strategic chess move. Before you decided I was disposable. Kendra. I'm not taking clients, Simon. They're choosing to leave. Because relationships matter more than org charts. Because trust matters more than innovation theater. Because 12 years of showing up matters more than 6 months of disruption cosplay. So what, you just let the company burn? No, I said. I let you learn that sometimes the weight you cut loose was the only thing keeping your ship afloat. I went back inside and locked the door. Thursday morning, Wilbur finally came home. I heard his car in the driveway at 6 a.m., the fumbling of keys at the front door, his heavy footsteps in the hallway. He appeared in the kitchen doorway while I was making coffee, looking like he'd slept in his car. Which, based on the wrinkled suit and the smell of stale fast food, he probably had. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. Kendra, please. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But this, what you're doing, it's destroying everything. I poured my coffee, added cream, took a sip. Didn't look at him. I lost my job, he continued, his voice cracking. Miles fired me. Said I falsified expense reports, but you know how it is. Everyone does it. A dinner here, a hotel there. It's just how business works. $43,000, Wilbur. That's not how business works. That's fraud. It wasn't, I was going to pay it back. With what money? The money you were going to steal from our joint accounts after the divorce you'd already filed for? He went pale. How did you? I know everything. The affair, the planning, the coordination with Simon and Claudette. I found her letter 5 months ago. I've been documenting everything since May. He slumped into a chair, put his head in his hands. 5 months. You've known for 5 months and you just played along? I prepared. There's a difference. Jesus Christ, Kendra. Who are you? I'm the woman whose husband conspired to destroy her career so he could publicly date his mistress without feeling guilty. I got called replaceable in front of my entire department. I decided I was done being treated like furniture. Claudette and it's over. She won't return my calls. Blames me for everything falling apart. Said I promised her it would be clean, that you'd never find out, that she'd get your job and we'd have everything we wanted. And instead she got fired, you got fired, and I got a thriving new business. You're taking everything from me. His voice rose. The job, the clients, probably this house. I'm taking what's mine. The clients I built relationships with. The reputation I earned. As for the house, check the deed. My name is on it. My inheritance from my grandmother paid the down payment. You're welcome to your half of the equity when we sell, minus the $43,000 you stole from Charleston Creative and the legal fees I'm going to incur divorcing you. I can't afford a lawyer. That's not my problem. He looked up at me, and for a moment I saw something like the man I'd married 15 years ago. Before the ambition soured into entitlement. Before he started seeing me as an obstacle instead of a partner. Did you ever love me? He asked quietly. Yes. For about 10 years. Then you started sleeping with a woman young enough to be your daughter and planning my professional destruction. That's when I stopped. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You absolutely meant for it to happen. You just didn't mean to get caught. There's a difference. I finished my coffee, rinsed the cup, set it in the dishwasher. He stayed at the table, staring at nothing. I'll have divorce papers drawn up by next week, I said. You can stay in the guest room until you find somewhere else. I'd prefer you move out by the end of the month. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, Wilbur. Maybe Claudette's apartment. Oh wait, she moved back in with her parents after losing her job. Maybe Simon's place? Oh wait, he's probably moving back to Connecticut. I paused at the doorway. You'll figure it out. You're very good at figuring out solutions that work best for Wilbur. Friday afternoon, Sandy drove up from Portland with 2 other people from my old team. Lynette from Content and Marcus from IT. They stood in my living room, still mostly empty because Wilbur and I had never really decorated it, and looked around like they were checking if this was real. So this is Hayes Creative Headquarters? Sandy asked. Temporary headquarters. I have office space in Seattle starting Monday. But I wanted to meet here first, away from everything. It's surreal, Lynette said. Last week we were working for Simon. Now we're starting fresh with you in a different state. You don't have to do this, I said, making sure they understood. You're all talented. You could find positions anywhere. This is a risk, new company, new market, no guarantee of success. Simon's already replaced us, Marcus said quietly. Hired 3 kids from Portland State. Called it, injecting young energy into the team. We got our termination notices yesterday. What? Restructuring, Sandy said, making air quotes. Apparently, anyone who was close to you is now considered part of the old guard. He's cleaning house. That's illegal retaliation. We know. Miles called each of us personally, said we could sue if we wanted. He'd support it. But honestly? Sandy looked at the others, who nodded. We'd rather just move forward. Build something new with someone we actually respect. Marcus pulled out his laptop. I grabbed something before I left. Might be useful. He opened a file directory. Inside were copies of every client file, every campaign brief, every creative asset we developed over the past 5 years. Marcus. I developed the backup system. I know how to access it. Consider it a parting gift from Charleston Creative's soon-to-be obsolete IT infrastructure. I should have told him to delete it. Should have said we'd build everything from scratch. Instead, I said, Monday morning. Seattle. Let's build something better. The Seattle office opened on a Monday in late October, exactly 3 weeks after the exit meeting that was supposed to end my career. The space was in Pioneer Square, third floor of a renovated brick building with exposed beams and windows that overlooked Elliott Bay. Nothing like the sterile corporate environment of Charleston Creative's Portland office. This felt alive, creative, like something being built rather than maintained. Sandy arrived first, carrying 2 boxes and a potted plant. For luck, she said, setting the plant on what would become the reception desk. My grandmother always said you need something living in a new space. Lynette came next with Marcus, both of them looking around like kids on Christmas morning. By noon, we'd assembled desks, hung whiteboards, set up the network. By 2 p.m., we had our first official client meeting. Luke Hayes, still no relation, sat in our conference room that still smelled like fresh paint and told us about his company's expansion plans. $50 million in new manufacturing capacity, which meant rebranding 6 product lines and launching a recruitment campaign for 200 new positions. I want Hayes Creative to handle all of it, he said. And before you worry about capacity, I know you're small right now. I don't care. I'd rather wait 3 months for your team than get something tomorrow from people who don't understand my company. The contract was worth $4.2 million over 18 months. After he left, the 4 of us just stood there in the conference room, looking at each other. Did that just happen? Lynette asked. That just happened, Sandy confirmed. By the end of week 1, we had 8 confirmed clients and contracts totaling $12.3 million. By week 2, I'd hired 3 more staff members, all women over 35 who'd been passed over for promotions at other agencies. By week 3, we were turning away business. The philosophy was simple: hire people who'd been underestimated. People who had something to prove. People who remembered what it felt like to be called replaceable and were determined to show the world otherwise. One afternoon in early November, Miles called with news. Charleston Creative is hemorrhaging, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. We're down 61% in revenue. Lost 43 clients total. Simon's gone. His father pulled strings to get him a position at a firm in Connecticut, but word got around. He's basically unhireable in the Pacific Northwest. And the others? Megan Jacobs quit last week. Took a position with a startup in Austin. Curtis Swan transferred to our Chicago branch. Asked to get as far away from the situation as possible. The new people Simon hired lasted about 2 weeks before they realized they were walking into a disaster. What about the partners? Thomas retired early. Said he was tired of dealing with the fallout. Richard is managing what's left, but between you and me, I don't think Charleston Creative survives another year. Not in its current form. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I just felt tired. That's a shame. You built something good there. I built something that got complacent. That confused longevity with wisdom. That let a 29-year-old with a famous father convince us that experience was the same as being outdated. He paused. You're proof that I was wrong. I'm proof that relationships matter more than org charts. That too. Listen, I'm calling with an offer. Charleston Creative's board wants to sell. They're looking for a buyer who understands the industry, who could bring over the remaining clients and staff. Miles. Hear me out. You buy Charleston Creative, or what's left of it. Fold the Portland office into Hayes Creative as a satellite location. I retire, which I should have done 5 years ago. You get access to the remaining infrastructure, the office space, the support staff, and legitimacy in the market. Complete the circle. That's not revenge, that's rescue. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's justice. The woman they called replaceable ends up owning the company that tried to replace her. I looked around my Seattle office. Sandy was on a call with a potential client, laughing at something they'd said. Lynette was sketching campaign ideas on the whiteboard. Marcus was setting up a new server while humming off-key. This was mine. Built from nothing in 3 weeks. No legacy systems, no political baggage, no history of being dismissed. What's the asking price? I asked. Miles named a figure. It was less than I expected, desperation pricing. With the contracts I'd already secured and Miles's backing, financing would be straightforward. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. There are other buyers interested. After he hung up, I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Seattle felt like possibility in a way Portland never had. Like reinvention. Like proof that you could lose everything and build something better from the ruins. My phone buzzed. Text from Sandy. New client inquiry. Tech startup looking for complete rebrand. Potential $2 million contract. Want me to schedule preliminary call? I typed back. Schedule it. And pull the team for brainstorm session tomorrow morning. Let's show them what Hayes Creative can do. 3 months ago, I'd been sitting in a conference room being called replaceable. Now I was turning away business because we couldn't scale fast enough to meet demand. The universe had a sense of humor. And I was finally laughing. I ran into Wilbur 3 months later at a coffee shop in downtown Portland. I was there meeting with a potential client, a boutique hotel chain looking to rebrand their entire West Coast properties. Hayes Creative had become successful enough that I could afford to be selective, and this account intrigued me. The creative challenge, not just the money. Wilbur was in line ahead of me, ordering the cheap drip coffee instead of the overpriced latte he used to get. His suit was the same one from the exit meeting, but it hung differently now. Looser. Like he'd lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. He saw me and froze. Kendra. Wilbur. The barista called out my name for my order, an oat milk cappuccino I didn't need but wanted. I picked it up, and Wilbur was still standing there, blocking the condiment station. You look good, he said finally. Different. Thank you. I heard about Hayes Creative. Heard you're doing really well. 12 employees now. Big clients. 16 employees. And yes, we're doing well. He nodded, stirring sugar into his coffee even though he'd always taken it black. I'm working for a medical supply distributor in Beaverton. Inside sales. Cold calling mostly. It's not pharmaceutical, but it pays the bills. I'm glad you found something. The divorce papers arrived last week. Your lawyer's pretty thorough. She's very good at her job. You're really taking the house. I'm buying out your equity. The paperwork specifies the amount. It's fair market value. Fair market value minus $43,000. That was the agreement with Charleston Creative. You repay them, or I include it in the divorce settlement. You chose not to repay them. He stared into his coffee cup. I'm living in a studio apartment in Gresham. Did you know that? 1 room. Murphy bed. I can hear my neighbor's TV through the walls. Wilbur, what do you want from me? I want you to admit you enjoyed this. Destroying my life, my career, everything I built. You didn't build anything. You coasted on charm and connections while blaming me for being too focused on work. And you didn't destroy your life. I just stopped being careful about hiding the destruction you created yourself. I made a mistake. You made hundreds of choices. Every hotel booking, every lie, every email coordinating my exit with Simon and Claudette. Those weren't mistakes. They were decisions. I checked my watch. I have a meeting. I need to go. Do you ever think about us? About what we had? I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. Saw the man I'd built a life with, who'd slowly decided that life wasn't enough. Who'd wanted something shinier, younger, easier. No, Wilbur. I don't. I left him standing there with his cheap coffee and walked to my meeting, where I closed a $3.8 million contract before lunch. The encounter with Simon happened 2 weeks after that, at the Portland airport. I was flying back to Seattle after visiting Miles, who'd officially retired and sold me Charleston Creative's remaining assets for a price that felt more like an apology than a transaction. The Portland office was now Hayes Creative Northwest, with 10 employees and growing. Simon was at the gate across from mine, slumped in a chair, wearing jeans and a hoodie instead of his usual designer suits. His flight was boarding to Hartford, heading back east, back to his father's world, back to whatever job Daddy's connections had secured. He saw me and looked away quickly, but I walked over anyway. Simon. He looked up, startled. Kendra. I wasn't expecting. I know. I sat down in the chair next to him. How's Connecticut? Fine. Good. My dad got me a position at his friend's firm. Marketing director. It's a good opportunity. That's good. We sat in awkward silence for a moment. Around us, travelers rushed past with rolling bags and coffee cups and the harried expression of people trying to catch flights. I'm sorry, Simon said finally. For what I said at the exit meeting. For how I handled everything. It was wrong. Yes, it was. I thought, he stopped, started again. I thought I knew everything. Thought experience didn't matter as much as innovation. Thought you were holding the company back instead of holding it together. And now? Now I'm 29 years old with one catastrophic failure on my resume and a reputation that follows me everywhere. Now I understand why my father wanted me to start at the bottom and work my way up instead of jumping straight to leadership. Now I get that there's a difference between disruption and destruction. His boarding announcement came over the speaker. He stood, picked up his bag. For what it's worth, he said, what you've built with Hayes Creative, it's impressive. You proved everyone wrong. I didn't prove anyone wrong, Simon. I just proved myself right. He nodded, understanding he'd never really understood me at all, and walked toward his gate. I watched him go, this young man who tried to erase me and ended up erasing himself instead. Then I boarded my flight to Seattle, where my team was waiting with 3 new client pitches and a celebration because we'd just been named one of the Pacific Northwest's fastest-growing creative agencies. The exit meeting had been 4 months ago. In that time, I'd lost a marriage that was already dead, a job that had stopped valuing me, and a version of myself that accepted being called replaceable. In return, I'd gained a company that bore my name, a team that chose to follow me, clients who valued relationship over convenience, and the absolute certainty that I was never, ever replaceable. The flight attendant came by with drinks. I ordered champagne. Celebrating something, she asked. Everything, I said. And I meant it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.